Okay, so this was a position, that we had in the portfolio, and we took profits on. The notes here are we took them for a 1% gain, and we did it. So we were doing this on a weekly, and we took the position on this breakout on the weekly. And if we look over here, and I pull the daily over so we can kind of see it, that time frame coincides with May 13th. So that would have been on this breakout here as well. And so that would have been on this bar's breakout as well, it looks like. And so we take the position and we do it as a weekly trade. Okay, so now let's walk through. So we took profits as it came back on this particular bar. And so the question is was that a good thing to do? And here happens, now we get to see more of the data, right, to see what happened. And we see today we actually had some pickup in volume and it came back. But let's just talk about the trade again as to whether we traded it the way we probably should have. So if we're going to take a weekly position, well, actually, let's talk about the difference between a daily and a weekly. The main difference is that on the daily, right, you're gonna get more noise, right? And so things on this time frame, on the daily time frame, let me pull this all the way over so we can see it. On the daily time frame, there's going to be more noise. So in other words, this thing's going to move up and down a lot more than it normally would on a weekly, right? On the weekly, it's going to look small in terms of what happens compared to the daily, right? You can see the little bitty things up here, but over here they're magnified. And that's what tends to happen. And so if you're trading it on a daily, and if you trade, let's just say we trade 100 trades and we trade them on a daily, we're going to have more failures on the daily, most likely, than we would on the weekly. And the reason for it is because there's more noise. And the closer you put your stops, the more likely are they going to get hit. So if we're using the daily for our stops on this one, when we took an entry on this breakout, right, we probably would have had reasonably tight stops, or could have had tight stops. We could have done it two ways. We could have said we're going to, well, actually not two ways. We're going to look at this swing point high because that's the one we broke over. And we're going to say on that swing point high, our stops are going to be just up underneath it somewhere. That would be a reasonable place to have the stops at, right? And then you also have this big wide price spread bar, not wide price spread, but high volume anchor bar there as well. And so that whole area right in here kind of looks like a place that, if it gets underneath that, you're probably wrong. And to review one more time, when we put our stops, if our stop actually gets hit, we want to be fairly guaranteed that that thing really is going to turn and keep going. We don't want to stop, we don't want the price to come down here, hit us, and then go right back the other way. And so you have to give it enough room, right, to say, okay, if it gets there, I'm gonna stop out because I know I'm wrong. And that's a hard thing, right? It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to figure out. So when I look at this again, I see this and I see this one here, and I say, you know what? That little area is the place to me, I would say is the place to me that I'm probably wrong, and I have to have my stop. If I use this breakout as a retest regen, I'd have to have an ATR after it, but I really probably should have my stop down here now that I look at it more.
Yeah,
so that,
at 77.65, which is above the X on the right there.
yeah, and so you're a little bit higher than me, but somewhere in there, right? And I'd probably use this bar in that little zone there, and I'd do a little ATR up underneath there probably. And this doesn't look like it has wide price spread, so an ATR wouldn't be that much. So,
I've got a question here.
Yeah.
Well, you see, you're trading on the weekly, but you're putting an ATR on the daily.
Well, no, I stopped back and I said, let's just assume we're trading on the daily, right? If I'm trading on the daily and I'm using the daily as the time frame, that's probably where the stop would be. And it's a good point, though. We don't want, if we're going to trade this, which we did on this particular one, if we're going to trade it on the weekly, we really want to stop on the weekly. because if we put it on the daily, again, the noise over here may stop us out. Whereas over on this longer time frame, it's not the same picture, right? I mean, the same picture over here, you know, ask yourself again, where would this have to go to tell me that more than likely I am wrong? Well, let's review what we know. If we get up underneath the swing point high that we broke out on right here, right? If we do that, then that says, that doesn't tell us it's quote unquote wrong, but it tells us that what was up, right, is probably sideways now. That doesn't mean we have to stop out right there. That just means we have to change our trade, right? It just says our trade has changed on us. It's not what we thought. It's not going to just continue up, which is what we hoped for, right? That's what we expected. That's not what happened, if that's what it does. And so when you look at it that way, it's like, okay, I don't want to stop out right there. I got to give it a little bit more room. So what else could I do? Well, so far, this one's held. There's a big volume bar right next to it, this one. There's another big volume bar here. I kind of have a wide price spread, high volume bar. Well, this one's probably not high volume, but you know, compared to the others here. It's close, but probably not. But it's wide price spread compared to the other ones. So if I do that, it's a swing point and a wide price spread. If I do that, I say, well, you know what? Top of this and that, you know, together, that little zone, so somewhere up underneath there is where I would put it. And that's a lot lower, as you see, than it would be over here.
So my question is if I did it as a weekly trade, I wouldn't take it a trade because my risk reward, it wouldn't have been that great based on the target.
And if that's the case, then that's the case. That's fine.
I got you.
Yeah, then you just got to find something else.
So we close that out for a 1% gain. Let's look at XLU and XLRE. We currently hold those in the portfolio, and I'm curious as to the last couple of moves that it's made up about profits, particularly since the ABCDs have been captured, more or less.
So let me throw those two in, XLU and XLRE.
Yeah.
So let's look at these, and I haven't looked at these trades, so you guys will just have to remind me what they're doing. So this one was on a weekly, I would assume, again?
Yes, both of them are weekly.
Okay, and where was this? Well, let's do XLRE to start with. Where was this one taken?
I'm going to get it right here. It was taken at 36.12, and that was, oh, the date. I gotta give you the date.
Yeah, what week was it?
I'll get you, hang on. Let me look here. I gotta pull this up. Bear with me.
Yeah, I mean, I could have pulled them up too, but it's easier if one of y'all do it. Yeah.
I got it. It's coming. Open orders. XLRE was taken. Oh, no, that's May 28th.
May 28th. So that
Wait,
would
no,
have been.
excuse me. I apologize.
Yeah,
That was an update. Okay. I gotta go find it in here.
Yeah, actually, if we go here, we can find it easier, probably, right? Because
actually, it was May 22nd.
yeah. So let me see. I think if we go here, we can quickly. No, you would have to go back, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
May 22nd.
Okay. So false alarm there.
You can do Control F on that page and search for the symbol.
Right. You could do that, and actually you could go reverse search and then hit the bottom one, if it's the only one on the page. But anyway, XLRE. So
XLRE was on May 20th. Excuse me.
so that was on this bar down as it came down on the daily.
May 20th. Yep.
Okay, and
Yeah,
over
36.
and over here it would have been the week of this week. Okay, so let me just make a note. It's here where we took it. Now I'd already broken out way back here,
Yeah.
and so the stop was where on this one.
Okay. Should have had that up. The stop is down on XLRE down at 35.50.
And that was where it was first at, or that was your revised.
I'm trying to dig in here and get to it. Yeah, the stop's at 35. Well, you know, you have these things ordered right now. You have to go back stop on it.
Yeah, that's
I gotta find the original post, excuse me. Move the stop up. Stops at 35.50, correct?
35.50 was the first stop.
No, that's the stop now. I moved it up already.
Yeah, no, I was trying to just understand the trade to begin with.
Oh, okay. Well, then the original stop was below that, obviously.
Yeah,
So,
and this is actually interesting. This, as you're doing that, this looks like it's already finished on ABCD on the weekly.
That's what I'm saying. 34.80 was the original stop.
34.80.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's
this.
the original stop.
So this today probably just about finished it. So 34.
Yeah, that's why.
No, that's not right, Matt. The trade was set up on the 15th of March.
Huh?
Unless you did two trades.
I have. Yeah.
And the entry price then was 34.73 with a stop at 33.
I'm looking at May 20th on the outside.
So there's another one that it's been done twice. So on this one, you've actually hit your target almost, right? So here, I mean, this is a nested ABCD because you actually have an ABCD that starts way back here, right? That's this huge one that goes, you know, Lord knows exactly where that one goes, but it goes way up there somewhere.
It's 40.88.
Yeah. So, and that's a good thing. That just says that this thing's going to keep trying to work higher, right? Which is fine. It's just that it usually takes a break on the way up. And I don't have it on here, but I can pull it over. But you actually had a monthly breakout too back here. So this thing is very strong, and we can see that on the cube. It's a very strong, and it's still fairly young all the way across. And so, you know, there's nothing wrong with this sector. It's a sector to keep going back to, which is what we're doing. That all makes sense. So as far as the question that you had, which is like, you know, do you take profits here? Well, yeah, you do. And now, you know, on our site, we have to take full profits because we don't have a scale in, scale out type thing. But that's okay too. We just take the full profits, wait for the next entry, and then scale back in, right, or come back in. So I would be looking at taking profits on this strength on the finish of an ABCD. And you know, usually you like, you know, let's talk about one other thing. Usually you like to look to the left-hand side of the chart and find something over here that tells you have resistance as well as the finish of an ABCD, right? You get them all lined up together. There is no left side, right? This thing's at all-time highs on this chart. And so you just have to, you know, you just have to go with the projections. There's nothing else you can work with. Now, if you really wanted to sit there and monitor it and be cute about it, you know, if we pull this daily back up, you can see how it just, you know, soared today with decent volume. You could say, oh, well, I'm just going to watch this, and when I finally see some sort of a reversal sign, you know, like I see maybe this here, something like that happen up here on the next day, you know, that's when I'd say, oh, well, this thing's done. But that's
It finished the daily ABCD too. I mean,
yeah, it has. I can see that as well, right? This nested one. But I'm saying if one wanted to try and, you know, do something like that, you know, they could. But I mean, it's done what you wanted, right? It probably was your target, wasn't it?
well, no, it's a weekly trade, and the target is 40.88.
Oh, but you put the 40.88 off of this.
I did.
Well, but that's
But my question is that when you have a nested ABCD that's finished, even though I still want to go back into this trade, should I take my profit? Because it's going to have to come down a long way to break that C point on that big ABCD, and it's going to work its way higher. My only question was, if you just leave it alone and don't get bored, take profits and hope it comes back and get it at a lower price. That was and you said yes if you see something.
yeah, and I thought it had finished your trade or was just about to finish your trade. This trade is finished as far as this ABCD, this huge ABCD, if that's what we're trying to trade, which is what you set this up as originally. Yeah, you could just hold in there and say, you know what, I'm just going to absorb the losses, and, you know, if it pulls back, and it probably will go sideways to down, right? I mean, that's probably what's coming next. And as a result of that, you're right, you would want to try and catch it. The only way that you can measure that in my mind, is you look back and say, okay, here's another way of thinking about it. I've got an ABCD that's done, right? Do I want to take profits or not? Well, how do I decide? Well, where do I think I can get back in? If I'm right, if it does pull back, where should it pull back to? Well, I could kind of see right there.
Well, I look down at those swing point highs, that blue anchor bar.
It ain't coming back here. And if it did, do you want it?
Well, I mean, if the Fed cut rates and risk is back.
Forget all of that stuff. Look at the chart. If it came all the way down here, would you really want it at that point in time? Probably not, right? The trade would look a lot different. It would look like this. It'd look like some sort of a up and now a big down.
I got you. Yeah.
I wouldn't want it here.
Yeah.
You know, and so if I look at it realistically and say, where would I be willing to buy this again, and where's an obvious point it might come back to? The only places I see on the weekly, right, is that little area right there. And so then I can say, okay, what am I going to gain if I'm right? What am I going to gain to get this? And what do I risk losing to try and get that?
Gotcha.
Right? That's a different way to look at it. And if I go over to the daily, right, you can kind of look at the daily and see if that same thing that we were just looking at here kind of lines up over here and makes sense too. And you know what? It kind of does. It doesn't look like you know, if it comes back, it doesn't look like it's going to come back all that much. So, you know, that's the that's the risk you take to take your gains, right? And if maybe this is the way to say it. If it does come back and you buy it here, you're going to have to figure out where your stops are going to go. You know, and the obvious place here of the stops is somewhere underneath this. So that's risking quite a bit, but you still got a big long thing you're still trying to get, so it still makes sense to go back into it. And if you're patient and just watch it when it comes back, right? In other words, you don't go and put an order right back in to get it right now at this price point. You just wait, let it come back into there and see what it does. And if it holds right there and starts to try and turn, well, then you just have to go with it again. If it doesn't, right, because what you'd really like is some sort of a, and I'm looking at this now, there's a little, well, this thing has so many little nested ABCDs. There's another one here, right?
Yeah, it's just walking right.
A little bitty one. And so you would actually want another little one to form somewhere in here so that this one could be extended again. So somewhere in there you'd want to, you know, ideally probably about that price point. Looks like
Well,
about.
I think what you said earlier makes sense.
Yeah.
You said, you know, you can get cute. Well, I don't want to get cute. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Then you just stay with it. Yeah.
Okay.
And you don't have a lot. You don't have a lot to gain on this one. To try and jump out and jump back in.
Gotcha.
As long as it's still behaving, you don't have a lot to gain.
All right,
You know.
so let's go down. Sorry.
That's all right.
Let's go
So
down.
let's do XLU.
XLU.
Yeah, let's do that one next. So let me pop back down here, grab that one. And so this one's doing the same sort of thing. Looks almost the same. May 22nd? Well, that's like fairly soon.
And we got in at the entry price was 59 even.
Okay.
Up of 56.50. Wait a minute.
So that was anticipating this breakout.
Yeah.
And then your stop was probably down here somewhere, I would think.
It was.
Yeah.
I moved back to the original. I moved the stop up, and I said, nope, I'm going to go back down. I moved it back down to 56.50, the original stop,
Yeah.
because it's a weekly trade, and I wanted to get back to that.
Yeah. And now, especially with the breakout, right, it should hold this, and you're giving it some room underneath that to say, you know, you should find some support somewhere in here and bounce back. So far, it hasn't violated anything, so that all looks fine. Was the R&R on this one from this ABC all the way up? Doubled?
Yeah, it's on the weekly. Yeah, it starts down there. Was that January the 18th? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the risk. The target is all the way up to 63. 394.
Yeah, so it's the same.
60.
Yeah, same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And today it touched the high, didn't quite get over. It had a little, has going to have more volume this week, it looks like. So I mean, this one looks fine too.
Yeah,
And
it got over the high today on more volume.
yeah, well, on the daily it did.
On the day,
Yeah.
sorry.
And why were you thinking this one might be the same, where you might want to take it out now?
Let's see. I have it's in the notes. So I wrote it in the notes.
Oh.
You can go back over the notes and scroll.
Yeah, I am.
To see XLU in the middle.
Has actualized 66% since the
I
second.
know it did. Yeah, it's the second retest region. It's only a 50-50 probability of it holding if it comes back.
Oh.
On the weekly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the risk you take, right? It hasn't started back yet. Matter of fact, if it did, you could always just nip it in the bud if you had to.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just let this thing run. I mean, volume picks up today, gets a nice big wide expansion. It's banging on the highs again. Again, if we look at the cube on this is just like the other one, right? It's fairly young in all of its moves. So I just think these are the kinds you just stay with.
That's great.
So
We'll stick with it.
okay. All right, cool. Let's look at these other things that we have here. So we've got some others to look at. I'll just start. Matter of fact, instead of going in this order, I'll just take them in the order that they show up over here on this guy. So I'll just take CCI first. Crown Castle International. Okay, so what are we trying to do with this one? I assume we're trying to go long, given what I see, or thinking about going long.
Well, I was expecting it to come back.
Okay. Well, it did right there. Yeah, you sometimes. You also gotta think. Excuse me. We had two big strong days up now, right? The market has, and when you get, the general market, we know that. And if I just pull this over here, we know that the sector is, the general market itself will pull the. Well, I should do it this way, right? The general market will pull up the sectors and it will pull up the stocks. And a lot of times, that's the pull factor, right? We know the stats here that this, exists, this pull. And that's the, back before they had that kind of data, it was the, all ships, rise with the tide kind of thing. And that's what happens. The individual stock here, it never did reset there, so it's fairly extended still. Bullish here, very young on the young one. So let's go back and look at the chart. So it didn't come back in. These are the kinds of things, it's like, do you chase them or not? Was this a multiple time frame breakout? It's going to be this week, huh?
We've owned this before, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, this is.
The only target I could see was doubling the weekly range, but I think it's killed it now.
Well, this actually was an ABCD from here to there, and now a doubling of that, and this is not percentage-wise, but a doubling of that takes you almost to where you are. All right. So the ABCD here is almost done, the first one, and then inside that you got another one. And this one has a little ways to go still, but usually when you finish up, any of them, they'll start to pause or do something. Actually, it's already done that one. So.
And I will say that on this one, Edward, I found this too, and you and I both, we uncover some of the trading signals. So people that are listening, that's where we're finding a lot of these stocks, and we're looking at trading signals. And I saw CCI, and I saw that ABCD had finished, so I didn't put it in my deal. So we're using the same website.
Yeah, and I'm just popping this up for people that are not familiar with the site. So, trading signals will alert you to these types of things that are taking place. And it's a filtering system that looks at all of the stocks on a nightly basis and gives you, because there's only two types of trade in Neo. There's either breakouts or retraces, and the ones that actually happen and those that have the potential to happen. And it alerts you on all of those if they meet all the criterion for that, is listed over here, that tells you, all the criterion of, what that bearish breakout should do. And if it meets enough of those criterion, it will alert you. So,
and one thing I want to point out for people that are listening is that if you go back to that screen there, there's that download data. If you'll point at that there, LA, at the top.
Yeah.
You can it'll download it into a spreadsheet, and then you can go through the sorting, which is the way. And then you can just uncover, the multiple time frame breakouts, how long your GTF is. It'll tell you all that. You can sort it. Not only that, but that's how you find stuff, and that's how I'm finding stuff.
Yeah, and it's very useful. It's useful for that. And so this one to me just looks like it's pretty much done, more than likely, and it's not something I would be chasing. You just have to be patient, wait on a retrace, see how it behaves, and look at it again. As a matter of fact, this is probably one you want to keep on your radar. This is one I would set a signal on. Now, this area here, you had a decent buildup in volume there, and that's the breakout. So anything back into this area is probably a good area to look at. And to talk one more time about another tool that's on here, which is nice, is this idea of putting a signal. If you go over to here and you look at the stock monitor, and if you put that particular stock into a watch list, this thing will signal it for you anytime it does a retrace, a bullish. In this case, it would be a bullish retrace. And so it's not like you have to go to your broker and set them up and monitor them all and have 500 signals. You just stick them in a watch list and you just scan the watch list to see if anything is signaled that day, and then you can just flip through them here. So it's, I don't know, we built this thing to be pretty easy to use. So
the other thing worth mentioning is that you can scan a watch list in trading signals now.
That's true. We added that. You can actually scan your watch list inside there, and that's a stricter criterion though, right? That says that you come back and you meet all those criteria, whereas Stock Monitor says you meet anything, right?
80% of the criteria is in the
has to be 80, right? That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that one. Let's go to the next one. Let me see. Where is my... it's here. We're getting too many windows. Let me clean up some of these windows. That one I need to get rid of, and this one I get rid of, and here's my watch list. So that was CCI. So that one's kind of like patience. Wait, see. Copart.
Copart is something I posted in here, and I've been watching it, and it's broken out, obviously. The ABCD actualized today, and or yesterday on the daily. Weekly looks good. MTTFs are extended on the daily. That's why I've been waiting for it to come back, because it's at 95%. But it's one of those stocks that you just smoke it.
Yeah, you just wish you were in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one has an ABCD here. If I just pull this up and do it from there now, that's about right there. So it's almost done on the weekly. And on
That's why I've been waiting for it to come back.
Yeah.
I may post that.
Yeah, and on the daily, this area right here, and actually the support zone that we see here, it really is matching what you see down here.
Yeah.
So it's that little area right there.
Well, what I'm hoping for, LA, is in that support area with that, right under the heavy green, that's going to be a swing point low right there. That will
This will, yeah.
And then if you can break that and get a reset on your MTTF, it'll break it, but it's got that major support bar on the left of it. So
yeah, I wouldn't count on it breaking it right now.
yeah, no, I'm not breaking the top of it.
No, I mean when it comes back, I wouldn't count on it breaking. So you're at 95 is what you're saying here, which is pretty extended.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying it's going to come back. I'm just thinking that it's going to run with that big white price, high volume bar, and it may get down deep into it.
Yeah, something else I don't think we've touched on before is, I was just glancing at this. When you have something that has, you know, this kind of extension, 95, right? Now, that's kind of nosebleed. And that says, hey, we should see some sort of reset. Now remember, this is a model. The model tries to take reality and model it. But it doesn't always catch everything. And if you remember, and I know I've talked about this before, when I did all the research on this, there was a question about how many bars do we count before we make a swing point low, and it was a very close call between 5 and 6. And the reason I went with 6 is I didn't want false signals. But what that ends up doing is it creates a situation like this where I go sideways a very long period of time, consolidation, right? And then this thing takes off again, but you never get a reset here because you never can print under, you know, a swing point low and actually break it. And so if I had it at 5 bars, for example, this bar here, and let me grab my little cursor, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this bar right here, 5 bars would have broke right there. Does that make sense? In other words, that would have ended up being a swing point low because it was the 5th bar. And you would have broke it right there. You'd also broke it here had you not broke it there. So in other words, had we optimized to the most aggressive view, we would have traded this thing differently. So what I'm trying to say is it's a model. So don't get too hung up over here and say, oh, it's 95, I can't take it. Look at your chart. Your chart had a nice consolidation for a long period of time. And it came really close to breaking the swing point low, but never quite did. And then it started to take off. When it starts to take off, you know, I mean, I don't know where the buy was. I have to try to analyze it more. But I'm just trying to say consolidations eventually lead to either breakdowns or breakouts. That's what happens, right? Stops accumulate on both sides. Your test, right? Eventually, one side or the other decides that there's value there. In this case, the value was there and the demand was greater than the supply, and it takes off. So anyway, I just wanted to do that aside because, you know, the model's not going to catch everything and accurately describe everything. It does a pretty good job, right? It gets most of it. Matter of fact, almost all of it, but it doesn't get everything. Okay. So that's that one. I don't know what you do here. You have to wait. I mean, you've kind of lost what you wanted, so yeah, that's what you got to do. CY was one we covered, I think, last week. Either last week or the one before. I stuck it back on here because I think, if I remember right, we said that there was not much we could do. I don't remember exactly the reasoning. It seems to me like we looked at it either in this week or this week, and it had already broken a couple swing point lows on the daily. Well, this thing got a takeover, right? That's what happened here. This is a semiconductor, and it's a takeover in that sector. But the reason I put it here was I was curious about, even though you got these huge bars here, these were huge bars relative to everything else at the time they printed, right before this one. Somebody knew something, and this happens so many times, right? And so a lot of times, if you're watching the signals or a particular stock, and you see this thing all of a sudden start taking off like this, and you see the volume just swell, a lot of times somebody knows something, right? And they're buying in front of it, knowing that they're going to get this huge pop. And I know the SEC is supposed to catch that and regulate all that, but it just, you know, you got to prove insider trading, which is hard. But I just thought it was curious, so I stuck it back on here. So, you know, in this case, we didn't have anything that told us it was breaking out until it was almost too late, right? You got a multiple swing point breakout. Excuse me, not a multiple. You just got a swing point breakout on the daily was all. But I guess you got it on the monthly at the end of the month. But it was a curious one. The thing I was curious about coming back and reviewing it was just this ideal here that a lot of times you'll see volume swell because somebody in the know is doing something with a larger amount of money, usually options, which is usually how they get caught, going with options instead of just stock. Gold is starting to pick up again. Now today is not the day you want to buy it, right? Because you get this black candle up here, but something's happening again, right? And you get the swing point breaks, all the way up, 3 in a row. If you go over the weekly, it broke or will break this week. So the retrace on this is probably going to be very interesting to look at again. This thing has a huge supply line, or has had a huge supply line up here. When this breaks, this is really going to take off, right? I don't know when it's going to be, but at some point it will. And you know, that's why I keep watching it. And anyway, I just thought it was interesting because you've got a lot of you know, volume come into this thing, squeezes it higher. I would guess the retrace will do a full retest regen off of this. That's what it should do, which takes you right into this area here, which is the volume off of this guy and the gap between that and this other one. So I think this little area right here is a sweet area. And what is that, about 124? So that was why I
It's
want.
interesting to me, LA, that you've got gold doing that. You've got XLU and XLRE defense sectors, and XLP is not in bad. It's not a bad set. Those are the defensive stocks.
And you got bonds as well.
And bonds. I mean, that's
I mean,
all those are acting really bullish.
For anybody not looking at bonds, these things went ballistic. Which, I mean, for the bond market, truly is ballistic. I mean, let me go to the long-term one here, stick it on. I mean, that is a significant move, right? 3 stair steps, huge volume. You know, a lot of fear. A lot of people thinking that maybe the Fed tightened too much, probably, and you got a recession on the outskirts.
And of course, you got the tariffs thing happening. And
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty, right? Let's go to the next one. NI, nice source.
yeah, I posted this one. It's a utility stock.
Huh. Okay.
Especially bullish. It's got a little bit overdid on the daily, but the weekly is what I was looking at too.
Yeah, and so what's the trade you're looking at here? Is it you're looking at a projection off an ABCD off of this?
Uh-huh.
This here?
There's weekly, and I haven't written it up yet, but to get the risk reward and everything. But I mean, there's some not so much on the daily. I'm just thinking if it gets over that massive daily anchor bar there and
Yeah.
that swing point high, it's gonna break out.
Yeah, this is the breakdown bar it hit today. All right,
Yeah.
this is where it came off last time, and you had this morning star, a shooting star, right, you know, the day before, as it was going in all this little congestion up here, and so it came off really hard, and now they just bring it right back up, and the volumes look better up than they do down. So yeah, this doesn't look bad. And it, you know, you got a potential breakout on all time frames.
And that's why I've got it posted. That's why,
And-
again,
yeah.
trading signals will show you that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You look at the charts and see if it makes sense.
Yeah, and you're also in this sweet sector, right?
Yep,
So you got sector pull helping you, and you've got a stock that's set up to break out everywhere. So that's a good looking one.
Yep, you don't have earnings till August, so.
Okay. Yeah. Not bad. Let's look at the next one now. So this was the trade. So this was a nice setup. This was a break. You had a consolidation that was taking place up here, and that was a big spike up on earnings. That was this bar. You had left swing points back here, right? And it's hard to beat this patient, right? But this thing I've been watching for a long time, and actually invested in it as well. But you know, this was a nice setup as it came back. Volume did expand, but you would expect it to expand when you blew out all these stops that were here. When it does that, right, the first retrace is the best. You come into 3 swing point highs, all of them greater than 6 bars, and so it's just a sweet setup. And you would expect it to get a nice bounce. Well, today it came right back up and tested straight into the breakdown bar's high right there. And so that, to me is a good spot to take the profits. I kind of was wanting to get 266, I think was what we originally were looking at. which was kind of like this area from over here that first shot up. But you know, as I looked at it today, it made sense to just take the profits there. But anyway, I expect.
Well, it's good because it closed just under that breakdown bar high, about
Yeah.
4 cents.
Yeah.
On less volume.
Yeah. So it was a good trade. I just wanted to review the trade. I mean,
Before you leave that,
yeah.
In the setup you said bearish retest. No, sorry. Bullish retest regen on 3 different zones.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 3 highs on the left.
These 3.
It wasn't 3 different time frames. It was 3 zones on the daily.
Yeah, they're all here. Yeah.
That's a bit I couldn't follow. I didn't.
Yeah, and it was pretty hard. It's pretty. I mean, when you're coming back into multiples, right? It's pretty hard to break them down the first time. I mean, those are gift trades.
Yeah.
They just don't happen very often. Yeah. And so, you know, the push back up, you know, you should retest regen off of these swing point lows now, which is what it's doing, bearish. You know, this thing may make it up into this area up here, but you know, you got the meat of the move on 2 days. That's pretty fast return. So
Yeah, that's a good trade on that.
yeah, it wasn't bad. It's hard to be that patient. PSA. So this is the storage guys. So they broke out on a monthly last month, on a weekly, and the daily's just like off the charts. Let's see what the cube looks like. So not too extended anywhere. Yeah, this is a good looking chart. The hard thing is where do you get in?
Jeannie found this one with Trading Cube Scanner.
Yeah, the hard thing here is where do you get in, and you just gotta, you know, when you see it, you just gotta do it, right? The next bar gives you a retest regen, gets in about 1/3 of the way, and just keeps going. You probably will get some sort of, you may get some sort of a retrace again, just because I think the general market will pull back now. And that's one of the things that's coming up is the general market, so we'll touch on that when we get there. But yeah, this is like one you just got to find a way to get into. And as we've talked about before, if you're really aggressive on something and you want to be in it, you know, another way to do it is just you go to one smaller time frame. You go to the 30-minute chart and find your way in. You know, with a small entry to get you started. I typically like to just wait on these things to, you know, to retrace and buy them. The difficulty is when they break out on multiple time frames, but we know that they've got to break out on multiple time frames that don't have anything still to stop them, and this does, right? All this congestion over here. And so my guess is it will come back, and you can find an entry into it. SBAC, what is this one? Communications, all in the same sectors, huh? We got a hot sector, we're gonna mine all of them. I like the other ones better than this one.
I found SPAC too, but I know that Edward, you posted this one. I saw that too, and I did not. I didn't see it. I didn't see where I would go in that one just yet.
Yeah, the other ones, I don't know what this was here. You know, big volume spiked down. I don't know if that was earnings or what it was.
I think it was. Yeah.
They certainly bought it back, right, and took it back to the highs, but. You know, we've seen several charts in this group. They'll behave kind of the same, you know, as they trade. This one also has an ABCD. It's almost done now. So again, I think you have to wait on these. Like you've got an ABCD here that looks like it's just about done. That would be to about there. So you've got a bigger one back here, and I guess that one's done too. And then there's another one that started here.
So in the future, Edward, so that you and I are kind of seems like we're kind of piggyback on each other. The reason I didn't put PSA or SBAC up there is because I saw that their ABCDs had finished, so I left them alone.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to kind of have a commonality there. Let's go.
Well, if yeah, I mean the thing is like, you know, when you're looking at this, what's the trade, right? You have to ask yourself, what's the trade? You know, Yeah, I mean, is there a trade now? I mean, it's fine to look at a nice chart, but unless you can make a position on it, you know, it's just a nice chart.
Well, this was found on the basis of the trading cube scanner looking for low MTTFs.
That's what I was saying earlier.
So, but I don't think you mentioned that earlier, did you? The trading cube scanner?
We did not mention the scanner, no.
No. Well, that's why I make the point. So, I mean, it's finding these strong stocks, but they've got to be put on a watch list, and you've got to wait.
Yeah.
I think that's the point.
Yeah. Yeah, this still has room to run. It's just going to take it a while, right? And you got to find a way into it. So you wait, you get the retrace. You know, if I'm looking at this trade and saying, okay, where can I do something? I always want to retrace back into a retest regen that holds. You got a good chance that this thing will hold in here somewhere. And if it comes back immediately, that's the sweet spot. So you wait, you see if it does. You got this big bar, right? This one. And so you know, that's when you can put the trade, right? If you come into, say, this area here, you can put your stops not too far down. That's about 4%, it looks like. That's a reasonable place to have a good stop. In other words, if it gets up underneath here, then, you know, I'm giving it plenty of room. If it gets under here, which is the top of this, I'm probably wrong, right? The move that I thought was going to take place isn't. And what I'm really doing is I'm banking on this long-term stuff to continue because it's not extended, right? And so this can go for a while. And so that's what you're doing.
April 29th on the daily, that's the earnings day. Is that what that bar is?
It probably is, yeah. Yeah, it's the 20th. That's the 20th. So I don't know what happened. 29th, nothing happened. So I don't know what happened there. But it might be something you dig into a little bit. Well, we already did XLRE, so the only one we got left is the S&P, and we're almost out of time, so let's do this, guys. So the S&P, you know, I write about this all the time, and you know, the big thing here was the bearish retest regen. I thought it would get over this one. It did. I thought the real test would be the second one, right, which would be this one. And that's what it's into, and it's come back within 6 bars, so it's the top third, and it's right there. This is where we should see, if we're going to see it, this is where the supply should show up. And it's not only here, it's on the weekly as well. And so the weekly is going to be this guy here, right? And it's right up into the top of it, which is what it should do as well. So this is it, right? And it's also the breakdown bar. So if we're going to see the supply come in, we're going to see it come in almost immediately now. And so the 2-day bounce will be a 2-day bounce if in fact the supply shows up. If not, then it's just going to be a congestion, not congestion, but consolidation up here again, you know, with higher highs. And so if one wants to take trades or take profits like we did on Now today, that's what you're looking at, right? You're looking at that and you're saying, wow, you know, I probably want to take my profits because the general market's going to pull against me now. And so
if you look at the daily chart, if you go back over there, go back to March 15th.
Yep.
You got that, it's the highest volume bar, and that's where we are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true too. That was the triple witching probably.
Yep.
Or quadruple witching probably.
So do you put emphasis on the quadruple witching, or is that something that you think is an anomaly that we really shouldn't count on volume based like that?
It's you know, I don't have a strong opinion about it. If it stands out, especially if it stands out, Matt, at a top or a bottom, I definitely do, right? But it's like in the middle, it doesn't have as much value. You know, in other words, think of
price, wide price. It's not wide price.
yeah, you don't have wide price for it. All you have, it's not an anchor. I mean, it's not a swing point. It's only a high volume. So you know, if you're doing the weighting, it's like a 1, but it's a long way away from time at this point. So that's less value, right? It's right near price though, which is what you're pointing out, and so that's valuable, right? It's in the same area. But yeah, this one doesn't have that much value. You know, given where it is on the chart at this point and where it was in terms of other things on the chart. It only has just the one thing going for it. We're always trying to find areas of significance, right? Is that really significant, which was your question? No, probably not that much. Not at this point. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was fast and furious again.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, talk soon.
Bye.